What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to check out this video right here. It is called Language Learning YouTube Has a Huge Problem. Now, I've been tagged within this video, which means that this person wants to react. He wants to leech some subs off of me. It's okay, my man. I do the same shit. Anyway, let's watch the video together, and before we do, I will say I've sped it up a little bit. The reason being is because, well, I don't want these videos going for 40 minutes long, so if he does sound like a little bit of a chipmunk, it'd be my fault, not his fault. Let's begin.
So there's this problem I've noticed in this online language learning space when it comes to actually speaking the language. And it's the fact that people are so obsessed with speaking the language. If you speak a language, then that is social proof and credibility that you are better than this other person who doesn't speak this many languages, you know? For example, this polyglot speaks 5 languages and this other one speaks 10 languages, and therefore he's perceived as having more authority on this subject to talk about languages, and you should probably trust him.
I actually, I know this is the majority of people, they actually do think this, especially the normies on the street. They're like, oh my god, he speaks 10 languages, when really he can just, verbalize 10 languages at a very basic level, opposed to this guy over here who speaks 1 language, but he's a goddamn professor in the language, okay? I am actually very different in my thinking overall, where I don't look at, the sum of languages generally being that important, even though I investigate hyperpolyglots, because I feel like there is people out there who have dedicated 10 years to a language, okay? 10, 20 years or whatever, and they don't get the same goddamn respect that they deserve compared to, say, someone who's spent, 10 years doing, friggin' 10 languages at a basic level. So I do want to help those people who deserve that respect, even though they've only got one other language under their belt, because they've dedicated time to it. And I think that comes back from the fact that I spent 10 years on Esperanto. Someone literally asked me in the comments the other day, how long have you done this for? Hours wise. And I was like, I don't know, probably 10,000 hours or more, easy. And they're like, oh my god, why would you spend so long on a language? And it's like, well, realistically, it is what it is. I just kept going deeper and deeper. I just enjoyed the process. But you know what? We need to show more respect to those guys out there who just focus on one language. Anyway, I don't know if that's going to be his argument. Let's see.
Because he speaks more languages. So the whole idea is that the competence in this language is measured by how well you speak the language. So why is this a problem? Well, if you break it down, which is what I'm going to do, you will see that it doesn't make any sense. And yet society perceives this as completely normal, right? I'm sure you've been in a situation where you speak a language and people are like, wow, you are so good at languages. Please, how do you do it? How do I learn a language? You are...
I just want to say one thing. It's very rare that I actually get those comments here in Australia. It's more along the lines of, why did you waste so much time? But then again, that could be because I, speak Esperanto. But even with Chinese, they're like, why? That's what I usually get here.
Perceived as somebody who knows a lot because you speak more languages. So I'm going to share with you my thoughts in 3 parts based off of my experience, what I think, in my opinion, is language, the nature of language, how we learn it, acquire it, because I believe that the way we define language and language learning right now is completely misunderstood. So first I want to show you this clip, because this is actually what triggered my thoughts.
Ah, shit, okay. I bet you this is an Evildea clip. Are we ready, boys? Let's do this.
Which triggered the idea of making this video. So some context, I guess. I'm watching this guy who's watching another guy who's been doing comprehensible...
This is definitely me, some guy watching another guy.
...inputs, so listening to Spanish for 2,000 hours. So if you don't know what Dreaming Spanish is, it's basically a website where you can learn Spanish, but what you do is you just watch videos, because it's input based, right? So the method is you watch a lot of videos, you expose yourself to input that your brain can understand, comprehensible input, and if you do this for a certain amount of hours, you can see it right here, then you'll be able to do certain things. I do like this channel, by the way, but he was reviewing this guy
Thank you.
Who has been doing Dreaming Spanish for 2,000 hours, okay? And he said something that caught my attention, so here's the clip.
I can wake up and order food and find a bathroom.
Oh god, he's saying up to 2,000 hours, that's what he can do? Wake up, order food, and go to the bathroom? You can literally do that within 30 hours of Pimsleur.
When you've done 2,000 hours, what you can do is this. You can literally do that with 30 hours of Pimsleur. There's something wrong with this, in my opinion. So let me explain. So in this video, Evildea, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, sorry. He seems surprised that this guy, after 2,000 hours of listening, is only able to do these basic things, right? I wake up and I whatever he said. To me, it sounds completely normal. So let me explain why. Okay, so here's my problem, right? The goal of this method, ALG, or comprehensible input, I guess, is to acquire a language naturally, 100% naturally. With ALG especially, it's trying to imitate the process that you go through as a baby, right? And so expose yourself to the language, make these connections.
Okay, I need to say something here because so many people say this about ALG, okay, guys? And it's so funny because the ALG guys, like the hardcore ones, okay? I'm talking... Like, when I talk about people in general, I'm actually talking about the minorities of that community. Like, there's minorities in the ALG community that are completely off their heads. There's minorities in the Esperanto community. Freaking, there's minorities in every community. Okay, so I'm talking about these guys. They will say that, oh, this is like how you learn as a baby. No. No. Babies do not learn like this. Do you think, honestly, a baby sits there for 2,000 hours just being quiet? Like 2,000 hours watching content in context? No. Okay. Like, what does a baby do as soon as it can do it? It talks. It will blabber, okay? It will make noises, and it will test those noises against the parent's reaction. And based on the reactions it gets, it will repeat certain noises until it starts forming words. And in fact, there's been studies done on this. I'm not like a study dude, okay? So if you want to find these yourself, you can. But there's been studies that have done on this that have showed that babies have tried to talk even before they had the capability of talking. So babies do not sit in a vacuum just listening. They do the full spectrum. They talk, they listen, they've tried to use visual cues, they use everything at their disposal to communicate as soon as possible. Now, does this negate the ALG method? No, like the method works. I know it works. I've seen people use it and it works. But can we please stop pretending this is how babies learn? This is not how they learn. This is just as artificial as any other method out there.
And basically form a second language brain, right? Right from the start by providing...
Okay, and the second language brain, I think Psycholingo was the one who covered this. I might have got the channel name wrong. I'm terrible with names. I'll put a link in the description. But you don't have a separate language brain. You don't have like an English brain and then like a Chinese brain over here for like an Esperanto brain, you know, back here in your freaking reptile brain. No, it doesn't work like that. Languages... They're not like perfectly circulated off regions. There's crisscrossing and all sorts of stuff going on here. And you can see this in real life when you get communities of mixed languages where what they will do is when they talk, they will slot in words, sentences, whatever, and mix up a language in order to basically improve efficiency of the conversation. So if it's more efficient to say it in freaking Hindi, they'll say it in Hindi. But if it's more efficient to say it in English, they'll say it in English. Okay, or if it's more trendy or whatever. But like, language is not just a separate thing that sits in your brain. It's completely... It's just like a mixture of neurons, and then you make certain pathways between them that strengthen certain connections. But still, it's not just like cordoned off areas.
Providing comprehensible input. Now, this is not going to be 100% similar as when you're a baby, because, you know, you're not a baby when you're learning a second language, but it's imitating this process. Now, that's...
And another thing is, as a baby, you don't have a concept of language or anything realistically like we do now. So you're forced down the route of basically analyzing sounds and linking those sounds to visual and physical cues within the world. But as a human adult, it is damn near impossible to put yourself in a state of nirvana where you do not automatically associate these things with other things, okay? It's just humans have pattern analysis, and once you reach an adult stage, relying on this without having any impact from your native language is almost impossible. In fact, I saw another video of someone doing Dreaming Spanish after, I think it was like 2,500 hours, and someone in the comment section, because he was talking in Spanish, he seemed really good, by the way, but someone in the comment section was a native, and they said, "Your Spanish sounds really good, but you seem to be making English sentences." So basically, even though he had absorbed this language for 2,500 hours, still, somewhere in the back of his brain, his English was like, the structures that he had learned from that language had impacted on it, okay?
That's the goal. Now, personally, I was really skeptical of this approach when I first heard about it, because I've learned Japanese for, I don't know how many years. I started in like 2018. So I've always been into learning grammar. Grammar is fascinating to me. But when I first heard this method, I was like, that cannot be possible. How can you learn something without learning the grammar, right? So I was skeptical, but also intrigued. So I tried it out, and I'm still trying it out right now. I'm doing ALG as well. I'm at 150 hours. I will make a video about that too.
Okay, so I'm 50 hours ahead of you, my boy. Let's race.
But it makes total sense to me. It makes total sense to me. So let me explain. In my opinion, you're not learning a language, or you shouldn't learn a language to be able to say X thing.
I'll stop you right there. One thing I do not like is when people say you should do a language for this or that reason, or you shouldn't do it for this and that reason. Because if I step back and I look at all the people I've tutored over the years when I was working as an English teacher, the reasons why people were learning English was so goddamn variant. Like, they were just so different that it kind of blew my mind, okay? Because I always just assumed it was, for X reason. But pretty much everyone came in for a completely different reason. So if someone says you shouldn't be doing it for this, you're basically negating someone over here.
Like, oh, you can say this, I will do this method because I can say that faster if I do it like using this method. So basically what you're saying is, I'm learning this language so I can say that, so I can have this result of, saying something faster.
Well, the vast majority of people do want to speak, if we're being honest, okay? Now, there is a small subset of people who are just happy to consume content and not actually use the language. But if you look at the grand scale of, the grand scheme of things, most people want to be able to utilize the language that they've learnt.
That's why I'm using this method. But you're not learning the language to be able to say something. That's not a valid goal.
Why is that not a valid goal? I'm assuming you're going to explain.
Speaking as a goal doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Speaking should not be the goal. You should not say, I am learning this language because I want to say this in the language, or I want to say X. That doesn't work. Let me explain why. If that was the goal, then what you could simply do is remember whatever you want to say. Say I wanted to say, I really like doing X. Then I could just go online, translate that from Dutch, my native language, to, let's say, Japanese, remember that, and then, hey, I can say this phrase.
Well, the obvious counter to that would be, yes, you can do that, but there comes a point where memorizing bespoke lines becomes less efficient compared to actually learning the structure of the language and learning how to put these components together. So if I was just to go to, let's say, India, yeah, I'd probably just learn the most basic lines that I need. Hello, where's the bathroom? I have a booking under this name, as opposed to learning the entire language for a simple trip. But let's say I was going to move to India and I'd live there for 10 years. Well, then, yeah, I'm going to need the language immediately, like in my day-to-day life. So I cannot just, sit back, relax, and consume the language. Instead, I'm going to learn the most common phrases I need. And then as I start learning all these most common phrases, I'm going to start chunking these pieces together and going, okay, well, I know this over here, and I can shove this together. And it's like building a Lego house, okay? Start with the foundations, you start building it up. As opposed to watching someone build the whole house, observing how they do it, and then trying it myself.
Right? So I could just remember it, but that's not how language works. If language worked like that, then right now I would have to remember every single word that I'm saying, but I'm not. I mean, I do have a script, but you get the idea.
Okay, well, now you're talking about the automation of basically language. So as you learn something, as opposed to the processes of acquisition that happen within Dreaming Spanish, what happens is first you load it into memory, okay? And then as with any skill set, you then need to repeat it until it becomes automated. It's like a person at a piano. They don't just start tapping away after listening to thousands of hours of the piano and just create beautiful music. They need to exercise their fingers. And a great example would be programming, okay? Let's say you want to learn C++, okay? That's a super generic goal. So what do? Well, I'll just start learning the entire language. But if I need this for a job, would not it be better to focus in on what I need specifically? Let's say C++ for game programming. Well, now I've shortened it down to a very, very small, or I've collapsed it down to a very, very small subset. Okay, what type of game programming? What do I want to make? I want to make online shooters. Okay, now we can collapse it down even further. Now I focus on that. When I get good at that, I can start stepping out in parallel.
I have something to say, a meaning, like a message with a meaning. I think of that and I just know how to say it. I know how to say it because, well, that's just how language works. I think of it and the speech it comes out, So like I said, the problem is when people are starting to learn it.
Well, the whole thing about, you say something, okay, we're talking about the ALG method here. You reach a certain amount of time, you can just think about something. Well, you don't even think about it, it just kind of comes out. I don't know if that's true or not. I have not tested this theory. I'm 200 hours in. I've got a couple of random phrases that will come out kind of naturally. I assume after 2,000 hours I will get that effect. But then again, it's like, that's just a lot of time to reach that state when I could take shortcuts to get there.
A language and they say, hey, I want to know how to say this. They are going to remember how to say it. They're going to look it up, right? And the whole point of this natural learning, ALG, is to not look things up. You just expose yourself to the language and your brain will make these connections. It will make a big language model with neural connections. And based off of those connections and this model, you will be able to say whatever you want to say. If you look
Okay, I'm going to give a parallel for another field. I think a big issue is that a lot of people look at language as if it's some type of special skill set, when realistically it's not. There is nothing special about language learning, okay? As much as we all want to feel special out there, it is not. So here's a parallel, again with programming. I could sit here and spend 2,000 hours watching videos on people teaching me how to write an operating system, okay? And after 2,000 hours, I assume I could probably sit down first time and, well, maybe not first time, but like I would be able to punch out most of an operating system after 2,000 hours. However, I required 2,000 hours to get to that point where I can kind of just like punch it out as I go, but I'm still going to make mistakes, just as with any language, okay? However, there is another way of doing this. I could watch a guy who walks me through the basics, and then I try it out myself. I make mistakes in the moment, and then I go, okay, via doing mistakes, I now learn. And then I go back, I watch him again, and I try again. And this process of going back, watching, and then applying, watching and applying, builds muscle memory early on, and it reinforces what I'm hearing. Because there's two parts to this, okay? Basically, ALG holds your hand behind your back in one part. The first part is you got the listening, and then you got the speaking. Now, when you speak, you basically reinforce what you've heard before. And when you listen to stuff, you can pick up those specific sounds and things like that. Well, then that helps you in speaking. So it's like it's a balancing act. And at certain points, you're going to need more of one and more of the other. And it's up to the person who's learning to make the decision around when that happens. But the problem I see at the moment with ALG is that they've made the decision for you. They've gone, nope, you're just going to wait until you're ready. And at whatever point that may be, that will be the point when you start speaking. Now, most people cannot wait. However, if you are one who has no urgency to get to a speaking state, then fine. It's a perfect method for you. Or if you don't like studying grammar or using any of the other methods out there, there's more than one method to learn a language. There's hundreds of them, okay? Then if it's the last one at your disposal and you've tried everything else, sure, why not? I'm not going to stop you.
Something up actively and you're trying to remember it or whatever, that defeats the whole point of natural learning, right? And so you have a problem here. So if you want to say something,
well, here's the problem. You just made natural learning the point. Natural learning is not the point. Learning is not the point. The point is to know a language. That's your goal, yeah? So, well, maybe that's a very generic goal, but you might have a specific goal, okay? So, for example, with my Mandarin Chinese, my specific goal at this point is to get to a stage in which I can watch Let's Plays and then make Let's Plays myself. Therefore, the smart idea for me would be to focus on the language that will be most likely coming up in a Let's Play environment. That would not be cooking shows or physics or something like that. It would be kill zombie, you know? Focus on the things I need.
And therefore, let's say you look it up or you learn it or you remember it or whatever. That's not natural learning. But if you want to do it the natural way, you want to acquire it, then there's a problem, because let's say that same phrase or whatever you want to say, the chances that you are going to be exposed to that specific phrase in a natural environment, being exposed to the language, those chances are just very slim. That's probably not going to happen very soon for like thousands of hours. And so you kind of have to just trust this process that you are going to expose yourself to the language, and at some point you will hear this word or whatever and you can use it. You cannot...
If the argument boils down to you just have to trust the process, then I don't know. I'm more of an exploratory guy. I like to try things out and see what works.
Choose what you want to learn. That's the problem. And so if we come back to what this guy is saying, like I can say some simple stuff like, wait, what did he say again? Order food and find a bathroom, for example. I don't know how to say simple stuff in Japanese, and like I said, I think this is normal, and I just explained why that is. The chances of you encountering that language in a natural environment are just low. If you were to ask me how to make a reservation in Japanese, I wouldn't right now be able to do it because I've never been exposed to a situation where I had to do that.
Well, I've been exposed to that situation in every language I've learned, but then again, I've only really learned 2 languages. So, again, this is very subjective.
Where I saw someone make a reservation for me to, absorb that language and acquire it and really internalize it and be like, oh, that's how he's making a reservation right now. I can probably do that as well. Now, here's the thing. If you look at a baby, right, this baby is exposed to the language 24/7. So his chances of encountering that specific piece of language, whatever that is, making a reservation or whatever, are just way higher. Now, I've never been exposed to these words like reservation or whatever, but I do think that because I have this whole foundation, years of input of Japanese and this whole language model in my brain with connections, if I were to encounter a situation like this, then it would probably be definitely be way easier for me to internalize that language. Whereas if you took someone who's been learning Japanese for like 1 month or something, yes, he can learn, or 30 hours, right? If he learned in those 30 hours how to make a reservation, yes, he can do that, but he's gonna have to rely mostly on remembering that, because there's no like...
And the more times he does it, the more he internalizes it. It's a simple matter of the fact. Like when I learned Esperanto, there was not material to naturally learn the language, as in like thousands of hours of videos to watch. In fact, I was the first person to produce thousands of hours of material for others to follow suit, okay? So it's like, you can learn in any way whatsoever. You just need to make a specific goal at the end of the day. However, I do feel if after 2,000 hours of consuming a language you are unable to say sentences such as, where is the bathroom, then there is something seriously wrong there. Because that is not this is not a specific phrase, okay? Now, he was probably, in his video, I don't know, hyperbolic. But let's say he wasn't hyperbolic. That consists of 3 parts, realistically. You've got the where, the bathroom, and then the is component. If you're unable to slap those 3 components together after hearing those components used in separate instances 2,000 times, then we have a serious issue, okay? Now, in the video, actually, I do remember him saying, where is the bathroom? So he did know how to say that. But, like, that is just, like, a very simple example. So if you extrapolate that slightly, these are words that you would have heard thousands of times at this point. Like, I've probably already heard these hundreds of times in Spanish.
Language model yet in his brain. It's just pure remembering that he can rely on. He cannot truly internalize that piece of language. Now, also, if you...
Well, that's false. I've internalized an entire language, Esperanto, by doing this.
You look at a baby, and this is probably the most important thing, is that his goal is not to speak because, well, he can speak and he's not concerned with speaking. Now, for...
You're doing pretty good up until this point. The biggest concern for a baby in the world, apart from sleep and food, is talking and interacting and communicating. I don't even know how to argue this. This is common sense. Like, maybe because I'm just strange. Maybe I've worked with too many young children. I've worked with too many babies. But, like, the obvious thing... Like, a baby will literally grab you by the hand and pull on your finger and go, Okay? They're yanking your goddamn finger. Do you think they're doing that just for the fun of it? They're trying to communicate. Okay? That's why they do it. All they're trying to do... Their entire existence in these early stages of their life is dedicated to understanding and communicating their own thoughts. Now, just because we don't understand them in the early stages does not mean that they're not trying.
For a baby, his circumstances are actually perfect because he is not expected to have conversations with people, and his goals are not to converse with people. So
his goals are. If you gave the baby a magical option to be able to instantly communicate all his needs and wants, he would take it. Yeah.
He doesn't want it himself, and he's not expected to. Alright, so baby don't really have the goal of speaking, so maybe we shouldn't either, right? But that...
Okay, well, the problem is, I want to watch the rest of this video, but I feel like the premise for your ideas here is based on a faulty belief system. Like, this is now not about ALG, okay? I haven't got too many issues with ALG. I've got a lot of issues with people claiming this is how a baby learns. And I actually believe that most people from the Dreaming Spanish community would agree that this is not a natural method. Like, there's nothing natural about this, realistically, except for the listening component. Yeah, I guess that's kind of natural. But overall, we do not do crosstalk as babies. Okay? But we do try talking right away. And there's a reason why you don't understand what they're saying. It's because they haven't yet learned how to vocalize their ideas. They haven't formed, like, everything that they need to be able to vocalize it. But they are trying. I don't know, guys. Like, am I going crazy? Like, everyone keeps saying this on YouTube. What is it with this belief system that babies don't want to talk? I must be going in... Either I am completely wrong about everything, and the vast majority of these YouTubers I've reviewed out there know something I don't know, or... I don't know, man. But anyway, I'm not going to watch his whole video because I don't know how I could respond to further things based on the fact that this premise here, it's flawed. But I will leave a link in his in my description, because I do want you guys to go check out his channel. He did make the video. He did like respond to me and everything, but yeah. Yeah, no. We've just hit a brick wall. Like, this is like, we've come to a discussion point. I was happy to discuss this in, different ways, but it's like, how do I debate with someone when they say the sky is red and I'm like, no, it's blue. Look at it. Like, I don't know how to move forward beyond this point. Okay, if you've enjoyed this video, let me know in the comment section below. But there is one thing I do want to say to the YouTuber in question here. I'm not attacking you, my man. Just understand that I cannot agree with this idea that babies just don't want to talk. Okay, so, and it means like this conversation can't really move forward too much. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, that's all I can say on the matter. And I'll see you all in the next video.